Another episode of Coastin is underway with Piv and Finer. I'm Evan Pivnik. That's David Fine. And we're joined by someone who is still technically a rookie in the ECHL broadcasting world. It's Cam McGuire, voice of the Worcester Railers. Cam, I say you're a rookie because you never completed your first season. I hope you understand that we're treating you this way. But how's everything going, man?
Fellas, good to catch up. Good to see you guys. Figured you guys, you must be pretty desperate on guests if you're reaching out to me. But yeah, like I said, it should be fun, and let's get into it.
You're one of the top 25 guests we could have recruited for Coastin here in the ECHL. So I mean, that's a pretty good honor, I'd say. Now, for you, you're kind of just getting back into the swing in the office. Obviously, the Railers North Division didn't play this year, but when did you get back to the office? What the heck were you doing beforehand for the last year?
Yeah, so we're sitting here on May 25th on a Tuesday. So this is my second week back in the office. I was furloughed early December, so I had a couple months to kind of try something new. I actually ended up coaching at a hockey academy in New Hampshire. 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, and 16-year-olds. One of my old coaches I used to play for, he coaches there now at Seacoast Performance Academy. So I started up with them in about middle of December, and we ran all the way through pretty much through April. So I was still in Worcester at the time. I was commuting back and forth pretty much every day. It was like an hour up there, an hour back, but had a ton of fun. It was great to be in a rink, even though it was something different from broadcasting. It was great to be on the ice pretty much every day. And just that feeling of being in a hockey rink was pretty special.
So you roll back into the office now and you have new experience under your belt. You're throwing your hat into the ring and saying, hey, I can maybe help out coaching the power play a little bit this year if you guys need.
I already told Cunny, I said, Cunny, I'm running the power play this year, but that would never happen. But no, Cunny was actually great. Like we'd go back and forth about a couple things like throughout the year. And it was cool. It's a different experience. It's something you can add to the repertoire, and it was cool to get my feet wet in the coaching realm of the world.
Last year being your unofficial first full year in the ECHL, we all have different stories of how it ended. For me, it was the day game in Wheeling. For Piv, it was crazy too. What was your story of how it all came, screeching to a halt before the Rudy Gobert and the world kind of shut down?
Yeah, well, it's kind of crazy. Like even being back like the last week, and like we've talked about it too, like I feel like I go around town and I'm like, oh yeah, like last season. And I'm like, wait, like last season, like when was that again? That was like 2 years ago. Like I keep getting my last seasons and my last year like mixed up. And even like when getting ready for this upcoming year, I have to kind of like look, I'm like, oh my God, it's already 2021, 22. Like every time I say it, I have to like think about it before I say it. But to go back to your question, actually our last game in 2019 in spring, I think it was March 8th. It was actually in Adirondack. Maybe it was 10th, March 8th or March 10th.
10th.
But I think we won 5. Was that the overtime one, Piv?
I believe it was either overtime or a shootout. I remember we had a couple of new guys playing.
I think it was an overtime 5-4 win. Crazy. Like I think we talked about before that game too, like our whole roster was like, because we played you guys opening night that year, and like our whole roster, I think we had like 2 guys playing that game in March that were like actually on our like opening night roster. So that just like summed up, like it was just crazy. But like, yeah, everything kind of happened, and that was the Wednesday night that the NBA thing happened, right? And then I think we were supposed to go to Maine on Friday night and then play Maine at home on Saturday. And we kind of could see the writing on the wall, but we obviously had to stay optimistic. And when fans were asking about the game Saturday, we were full gear ahead. But it just kind of was a whirlwind when everything happened. And next thing you know, it was like Saturday night, and we had found out that on Sunday it was going to be announced that the league was going to be shutting down for the season. And so it was kind of our job to get in touch with all the players and kind of how we wanted to handle that, to let them know. Obviously, they had to get in, do all their exit physicals. We were lucky enough, looking back on it, probably maybe not the safest thing, but we did grab some exit interviews. But all the physicals were done, all that stuff. Like I remember, like we had guys like rushing out, like the Canadian guys, like trying to get across the border. They were like really concerned about that. So it was one of those things, and like you guys probably lived it too. It was just like those last 3 or 4 days were just the craziest, like most hectic sprint that at least I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, and I understand the Canadian thing a lot because we were supposed to go to Brampton that Thursday. So the NBA stuff happened Wednesday night, and then that's when all the leagues started to follow suit with that. And then it was Thursday morning we were supposed to leave to go on the bus to Brampton, and then our biggest concern was, okay, what if we go to Brampton and everything gets shut down while we're in Brampton, and then we get stuck there? And obviously, it's not the most ideal place to get stuck in, and you have all this stuff waiting for you on you just don't want to get stuck in a country that you're not a citizen of. Yes. I know there's a lot of guys I'm sure that would have been happy, our Canadian friends on the team, but just to be in that situation again, as you said, that exit interview day, it was just so surreal. And for the guys, I know we talked to a couple of guys on the podcast about it. It just didn't have that sense of closure as well, because everything was being rushed. There was no final chapter to your season, because if you're playing, it's either it ends in the playoffs or you're not making the playoffs. There's just not that, final chapter to that book.
Yeah, it almost felt like we were going like on like winter break or like all-star break. And it was like one of those things like, oh, I'll see you in a couple days. But no, realistically, like this is it. Like this season's done.
It was crazy too, because I remember we were supposed to go to Newfoundland like 4 days later when I was in Reading. And like, even before we knew officially that the season was going to be canceled, we knew it would be at least suspended on that Thursday. And I remember watching the Royals have what I knew was probably going to be their last like morning skate as soon as it ended, getting the official word. And then Norfolk was like taking the ice. And then we're like, this is probably going to be suspended like later this day. And it was at like 5 or 6 p.m., if I remember, Eastern.
Yeah.
And getting on the phone, like while the Admirals are finishing their morning skate at like, 12:30 p.m. and canceling our flight to Newfoundland so that we could get our money back. Because if it was within like a 48-hour period with Air Canada, with a big group like that, you weren't guaranteed. And it was like, then I remember calling the hotel in St. John's and the Jag, beautiful Jag. And they were like the nicest people and so understanding. And you know how it is, like when you have to like ask for your money back, it's kind of a little awkward. And I don't really like, backing out of a promise, like that's a contract, like we're going to be there. And they were like, no, we understand. Like, all this stuff, like world's just crazy right now. And so, yeah, there's a lot of memories there, besides the fact that there were 6,000 screaming West Virginian school children in Wheeling 24 hours before, which was just wild. But Cam, I like what Brad Stevens of the Boston Celtics said, because, he's like a Midwest guy. He was at Butler University.
Yep.
And he said, he was asked about whether he'd go back to coach at Indiana. And he said, I'm a grown man now. I'm a masshole and I love my Dunkin' Donuts. So you're kind of a Midwest guy too. What's your indoctrination level in the Commonwealth there?
Yeah, so it's funny, like everyone always asks like where I grew up and like where I'm from, and I kind of tell people it's like different things. So I actually grew up in Connecticut, but all my family is from Wisconsin. My parents moved back there a handful of years. I went to school out just outside Chicago. My brother went to school in Wisconsin. So when we were growing up in Connecticut, like we always stayed our summers like in Wisconsin. My grandparents live on the lake in Madison, so I kind of have like this dual like I guess you could call it like a dual citizenship of like the Wisconsin like Connecticut aspect. So like it's almost like when I'm back in the Midwest, people are like, oh, where are you from? And like now I'm just like, oh, like Massachusetts. But like when I'm in Connecticut or Massachusetts and people ask where I'm from, I'm like, oh, I'm from Wisconsin, because I just feel like it starts like this whole new conversation. Whereas like if I'm in Worcester and I'm like, oh, I'm from Connecticut, someone's just like, oh yeah, like nice. And like they just shrug it off and like don't think anything of it. Whereas if I go like, oh yeah, I'm like actually from Milwaukee or from Chicago, they like their eyes kind of light up and they like want to know a little bit more. So it's a great conversation starter. So but back to your topic, I've been in Worcester since 2019 of June and was actually pretty familiar with the area just from playing hockey in New England growing up. Obviously hockey tournaments up in Marlborough, so you always drive through Worcester, but it was never one of those places where we would like stop and like do things in Worcester. It was always like, oh, we'll go to Marlborough for the tournament, and if you're in Marlborough, you'll go to Boston. But it's been pretty cool to like see Worcester kind of evolve, and you guys can attest to it as well, coming here for the last handful of years. But the way the city's evolved since like the inception of the Railers back in their first season of play, and in 2017 and 18, and Now with the Worcester Red Sox in town, their first summer of play, just like the buzz around the city, and it's not even just from sports with the Railers, Massachusetts Pirates indoor football team who plays right down the hall here in the DCU Center, the Woo Sox obviously, and then all the other college sports too, and Worcester Bravehearts, a college summer baseball team. There's just so much to do in the city, and I feel like it's one of those things where it's just going to keep continuing to grow, and it's even outside of sports. It's just the businesses in the city as well. So it's been cool to kind of see the transformation over the last couple of years.
Before I let Piv go here, people forget Worcester is the second largest city in New England behind Boston. So it's Boston 1, Worcester 2, and then I think it's Portland and Providence are 3 and 4. I may be
great trivia question, and that's kind of how it's almost like the icebreaker. If I'm back in the Midwest, people are like, "Oh, where do you live?" And I'm like, "You know where Boston is, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, like Red Sox, like Patriots, Celtics, Bruins." And I'm like, "Yeah, I actually live in Worcester." It's like I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of like a suburb like outside of Boston." And then I'll be like, "You know what the second largest city in New England is?" And they're like, "Oh, like New York City." And I'm like, "No, that's actually technically not in New England." I'm like, "How about Worcester?" And they legit don't believe me.
Yeah, that's when people will be like, okay, Cam's kind of a strange guy. We'll go
Yeah.
to the other side of the bar and talk to our actual friends. So Cam, we were talking about before, where you're from and where you kind of identify as in terms of where you grew up, but where did your sports affiliations lie? Because there are a lot of different teams that you could have cheered for when you're growing up, but who got the support from Cam McGuire?
That's a great question. There was a ton. So where I grew up in Connecticut, Ridgefield, Connecticut, it's right on the New York state line. So your proximity to New York City, which you guys both know, Rangers, Islanders, Yankees, Mets, NBA. Let's just leave that on the bookshelf. But and then football too, Giants, Jets. But actually my dad grew up in Green Bay, and our family's had season tickets since Lambeau Field opened. So for football, it's definitely Green Bay. Growing up, I just watched a ton of Rangers games. I watched Islanders and Devils too, but I don't know, Rangers was kind of like the cool team to root for. So I guess I could consider myself a Rangers fan growing up, and then went to a bunch of Yankees games too. Piv, I did go to some Mets games.
That's fine.
It's one of those things. I don't know. People are always like, "What's your favorite team?" And other than the Green Bay Packers, I don't really have a favorite professional team. I just love sports in general. But I will say my allegiance lies with the University of Wisconsin, because my grandparents have had they live in Madison, born and raised. They've had football season tickets since I can ever remember, hockey season tickets. My brother actually played hockey at Wisconsin. And when I was a kid, I used to I followed college hockey way more than I did the NHL, because there's no NHL team in Wisconsin. So the Wisconsin Badgers are kind of like their NHL team. So it's kind of I'm more of a University of Wisconsin sports fan than any other pro team, if that makes sense.
So I'm 2.5 hours away from Madison now, and I'm just shocked at how many Badgers decals there are on the back of cars. It's amazing. Madison's such a great city as well. And I know Camp Randall just gets rocking on a Saturday in the fall, but you said season ticket holders for the Packers since Lambeau Field opened?
Yeah. So my grandma, my dad's mom, was working at a bank when they were building Lambeau Field. So actually people don't, I'm trying to remember too the years, but the Packers used to play in Milwaukee, even though they were still called the Green Bay Packers. They would take the train down from Green Bay to Milwaukee, which Green Bay to Milwaukee, rough estimate is maybe hour and a half, 2 hours. But long story short, my grandma was working at this bank, and her boss was like, I really think that you should invest in season tickets at Lambeau Field. I think they're going to be a hot commodity, and something down the road that could be really worth something. She just kind of didn't think anything of it and was just yeah, whatever. And then one day she's finally just all right, yeah, I'll sign up for the season tickets. I'll buy the season tickets. And now looking back on it, it was probably one of the greatest moves that she's ever made in her life.
So they would have been at the Ice Bowl, the playoff game against the,
yeah. What year would that have been?
1966, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they went to the game, but they would have had the tickets.
It's crazy to me too, because you say that, and it's like in retrospect with the NFL, because 1957 is when Lambeau Field opened, and I just quickly popped it in here. So that the game,
people are going to be like, this guy's just lying. What is it, 57?
1957 Lambeau Field opened, and then cost of construction less than $1 million. Obviously, there's been renovations since. This is crazy to me too, because the game that's widely considered the one game that put the NFL as the most popular sport in America over baseball was 1958, when the Giants Colts played into overtime and Don Amici scored the winner, I think, for Baltimore at Yankee Stadium. Not that I was there or anything, but I've clearly been up on my NFL Network and NFL knowledge.
I actually thought you mentioned last year that you went to that game.
Yeah, well, maybe I old mentality, but young bones. But so 1 year before the game that put the NFL on the map, overtime game, Baltimore Colts versus New York Giants, they had purchased season tickets to what would become now. You must have to wait 50 to 60 years to get off the waiting list, right? For season tickets.
The waiting list is just absolutely crazy. Like, I think, like, say if I put my name like on the waiting list, like, I could live a very long life, and I honestly don't think I would. Like, that's how long it is. But it's actually funny. I actually need to call my parents and ask them about this. I think there was a deadline to like renew the season tickets, and like, not that my parents weren't going to renew them, but they were like, kind of like, now, the Aaron Rodgers saga and all that drama. Now that we technically right now don't have a quarterback, but they were leaning towards the side, even with that, not like, if he doesn't come back, still renewing them. And I was like, if you guys do one thing, like, just please renew those tickets, because once you get rid of them, you're not getting them back.
No.
I do need to find out about that. So that brings up a great point. I'll actually write that down.
Yeah, you could end up like Jimmy Fallon in Fever Pitch, and like the guy was going to pay like what, $185,000 just for the rights for the season tickets.
Devil Ray dancing, baby.
Devil Ray dancing. That's a great reference. I love that. And then Drew Barrymore has to run on the field and stop the.
That's an all-time movie. Oh my god! I watched it the day before opening day for MLB.
Was the field spongy?
Yeah. Great movie, absolutely great movie.
Oh yeah, it was on TV the other day, so it's very fresh in my mind.
I think I might have like illegally streamed it on YouTube the night before opening day. I was like, I was talking to my buddy about it, and he's just that Devil Ray dancing scene. Oh,
that's not Yankey dancing. It's Devil Ray dancing.
And then this is going off track, but remember the scene when they're down in spring training, and she's with like Jimmy Fallon goes down to spring training, and she's at like her parents' house. And like, they're like, whoa, go Red Sox. And the dad's like, who in their right mind? She's just like, yeah, like, look at that guy.
Can you believe these idiots,
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
Yeah. It happened to work out. They won the World Series that year while they were doing that whole movie. So
that is true.
So that's again, I think the Yankee fans wouldn't enjoy that movie, but it's like a nice feel good baseball movie, a little love story in it, and
sports movie.
Yeah,
where you got your sports flair.
Possibly a top 5 of all time sports movie. We'll leave that up for debate for another time, I think.
Well, yeah, and I also love the scene, also underrated, and I do love the movie as a Yankees fan, by the way. I love the scene where like he's like Jimmy Fallon's gone off the deep end. He and Drew Barrymore broken up, and remember, like he's like
behind the couch. He's got the Cheetos going.
How'd he get the Buckner tape?
Stanley screwed him. He didn't cover first.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So Worcester Red Sox, you guys were the first ones there, the first affiliated pro sports team. Obviously the Worcester Sharks were before that, but that's right. Ice Cats before that. Sorry. Beg your pardon. But I mean, Worcester is kind of this, we talked about earlier, but there's a buzz, kind of this up and coming city. Obviously there's been a lot of development, but like, it's one thing to talk about it on the air, but what's it like to actually be there and a part of it as you see like the community kind of rallying around you and the Woo Sox?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely exciting. I was there. I was actually gone for their first game. I was back home in Wisconsin visiting my family. So I actually went this past Friday. Oh my gosh, it was unbelievable. But I think just the buzz in the city, like with all the sports, and obviously with us coming back in October and us having that year off. But it's kind of like we kind of talk about it upstairs, and it's kind of like one of those things like when, and you guys can attest to it too, but like the first year of Railers hockey like was so exciting, and like I feel like the Railers and are kind of going to have that same feel, or feel I should say, when we come back in October, because we've had that like year off. So it's almost like we like didn't play for a year, but like, hey, we're still around, but like we're back, and we're back on the ice. And I think it's just like that new energy, right? Like things can get stale sometimes, and things can get old, and we're always trying to find ways to spice things up in whatever we do. And I think this year's going to be really exciting for the Railers, and it's been really fun to watch the Woo Sox and see their popularity throughout the city, and obviously all the other different sports teams that we have throughout the city as well.
One thing you guys do really, really well is just your community presence. I mean, you guys win the award every year for, community team of the year. Are we going to see tracks maybe throughout a first pitch at a Woo Sox game coming up soon?
We're working on it. I gotta get him in there, right? Like there's no way that he shouldn't be in there. He was there opening day. He has the Railers like Red Sox jersey. Remember when we did that game? So he rocks that thing around that stadium. That guy's like, he's got VIP. He's not at the level where he can throw out the first pitch, but he's walking around with this jersey. He's got the swag going. He's definitely VIP at Polar Park for sure.
There has to be a great, as we talked about all the professional sports that are now coming to Worcester and now being a part of the community. You guys have there been a lot of talks of working together with those teams like the Woo Sox and, obviously you have the arena football team inside your own building.
Right. So obviously we've got all the colleges that are around, and we've got the Railers, the Woo Sox, the Worcester Bravehearts, who are a summer collegiate baseball team who we've worked with from day one. We actually had a kind of like a sidewalk merchandise sale back in the fall where we teamed up with the Woo Sox and the Bravehearts and kind of had a bunch of tents set up outside the Worcester Ice Center and sold a bunch of different merchandise. So it's been awesome to work with all these different teams, to kind of throw ideas back at one another. And it's been awesome you just learn so much. Like there's things that you like don't even know exist, or things that go on behind the scenes. So it's been great to kind of work hand in hand with all those people.
Piv alluded to it, the community award stuff. The thing that I have always gone back to with any organization I've been with is that the thing that the Railers do better, specifically with the community, is the Skate for Success, which is a huge credit to yourself, Mike Myers, Paul Harris, who's one of the most underrated front office members in the league doing the community stuff for you guys. So give us an overview for those that don't know what Skate for Success is, why it's so important, and kind of the outreach that you have done in Worcester with some of the underprivileged, parts of Worcester.
Yeah, well, I think Skate for Success, I mean, that starts up top. You mentioned all of us, but that starts with our ownership group of Cliff and Susan Rucker. And when they came in and brought the Railers into town, their biggest idea in mind, and I was talking about this the other day with someone, like, it's called the Worcester Railers Hockey Club. It's not just called like the Worcester Railers. Like this is much bigger than just like a hockey team. Like we want to be out in the community as much as we can as possible. And we've done that, I feel like, since day one. And it's been cool to watch that kind of develop since I've been here as well. But yeah, back to Skate for Success. From about September through April, every Tuesday, we have fourth graders from local public schools in Worcester. We provide transportation for them, so they get picked up at their school. They hop on over to the Worcester Ice Center. We have a handful of players there each week. Our coaching staff is there. Multiple members from the front office are there. And we essentially help teach them how to skate. So most of these kids have never skated before. So we give them a Worcester Railers jersey. They get skates for the day, helmet for the day, and it's about an hour that we're on the ice with them, just teaching them how to skate. They're interacting with the players. They're interacting with the staff. Trax as well. Trax is an unbelievable skate. He might be first line center next year. That guy can fly on the ice. And then after the skating, the players kind of walk around and a little bit of a meet and greet, and we provide everyone with a lunch for the day. And I think they get in about 9 in the morning, and they're usually out of there by 1 o'clock. So it's kind of like an all morning experience. But since the start of it, I think we've seen over 5,000 fourth grade students throughout Worcester come in and come out. So it's been great to just see the program really take off, and it's just grown every year that they've the Railers have started it.
But it sounds so simple and such a great idea.
Yeah.
But there's so many moving parts that go along with this. Like, you got to get the bus to get the kids there. The bus is to get the kids there. You got to make sure that Dave Cuniff, the head coach, is good with the players, that each player doesn't have a random doctor's appointment or something. You have to get the food for the lunches, like you were saying. You have to get the pucks. So it's really not as easy as it sounds.
Right. Well, it's one of those things, like, it starts, and Paul is kind of the liaison at all this. He's the one that books the buses, makes sure the meals are there. But yeah, we're there. I mean, strapping helmets on, helping kids tie skates. It's definitely more than like a one-day event. Like, yeah, it takes place every Tuesday, but like, this takes like multiple days of planning on it, because you guys know how it is, especially in the season too. Like, come off of a 3-3 weekend, you're already on Monday and you're like, oh gosh, like, we have skate to success tomorrow. It's like, is the bus there? Is the food going to be there? So there's a lot of planning that goes behind it. And it definitely takes a full team to make it happen. And it starts with our sponsors too. We have a lot of great sponsors behind the program. Hanover Insurance, Fallon Health, WBDC, and then AA Transportation. So it's been great. It's an unbelievable program, and we're looking forward to when we can get some kids back on the ice, because obviously we weren't able to have it this past year.
Before we wrap up with you, Cam, I got to talk about some of the person who you got the job from, and the person who you've been working with for the past year, who now has moved on from the Worcester Railers. But you had to take over for Tom Matthews, who in his day, when the DCU Center was rocking, his shirt came off, New Kids on the Block was playing. Was that kind of anything you had to talk about with management when you first came in and said, hey, this is what Tom did? He took his shirt off. He went crazy during the games. Were you prepared to maybe have to do that? Yeah,
well, I was kind of one of those things when I was interviewing for the job, and Tom had moved on, and Tom's a great guy, by the way, still in Worcester. See him around town all the time. He's actually working for Mass Live, so we work with them a lot too. So we kind of correlate with them. But yeah, I had seen all this stuff. I'd heard about all the, what do you want to say, shenanigans, entertainment, I think is a better word. But yeah, I don't know. If you're asking me if I got asked in my interview if I was willing to take my shirt off during a game at the DCU Center, the answer probably would have leaned towards no, but I guess I would have had to feel out the room.
Okay. And then to follow up with that, Eric Lindquist was the guy that you worked with your first, this past 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, last 2 years.
last time the Railers played. He's a guy who's been through it all, seen it all, and done a lot of stuff in his life. That kind of pertains to hockey and kind of doesn't. What'd you kind of learn from your experiences working with Eric?
Eric was great to work with. There definitely was never a dull moment, and every day was exciting. I guess I can date back and give you a little bit more of a backstory here. But yeah, when I reached out to the Railers about the job opening, Eric was kind of the person that I had reached out to, and I didn't know Eric at all. But this was a couple weeks before I graduated in 2019, and Eric, he's been doing this for a long, long time. And it was kind of one of those positions where I was obviously graduating college, and I was obviously wanting to get into a communications play-by-play gig somewhere in hockey. And I'd seen the posting for the Worcester Railers public relations and social media job. So I kind of just threw my name in the hat and read the description, and there wasn't really any play-by-play or kind of broadcast stuff involved in it, but I figured why not throw my name in the hat here, and ended up connecting with Eric and going through the process with him. And after talking with him, it was a great situation where he had kind of been doing the play-by-play PR communication side of things for the last 15 years and was trying to segue his way out of it. So it worked out well where he was trying to take a little bit off his plate. So we kind of worked out this hybrid position, I guess you could say, where I did play-by-play for home games. He did play-by-play on the road, and then we would do color, vice versa. But to make a long story short, I learned so much from Eric in my first season, so much stuff behind the scenes that I wouldn't have known if I was just kind of on my own. So it was great to have him around for year one, and we're still in touch. We talk a couple of times throughout the week, but it was a ton of fun working with him and learned a lot, and much credit back to him for kind of teaching me the ropes and now kind of just letting me fly and pushing me off the curb.
Have you seen Mad House yet?
I actually have seen a couple episodes. I'm sure it was definitely like during quarantine that I had watched a couple.
Yep.
My roommate, a guy that used to work here, he crushed like the whole season. He thought it was unbelievable.
I've seen it. Yeah. Mad House is Eric Lindquist's not claim to fame, because he was on Wheel of Fortune. Apparently, I can't find that episode. I've looked a lot trying to find that episode. I haven't found it.
I have seen when a picture he showed me, like he had this like a newspaper clip of it. So I can't remember how old he was. I think he was like 13 maybe, but it was the picture's hilarious. Mad
House, the reality show, the short-lived reality show on Sci-Fi that starred Eric Lindquist.
One series.
And it's been a blast here. My final one for you is we talk about the welcome to the minors moments. For media guys, it's different than players, but you were working with Eric, so there may have been many more welcome to the minors moments than maybe Piv or I even experienced. So give us your best, hopefully early on in the season. Ooh. Maybe time you messed up a little bit, needed to cover your tracks, or something like that as a welcome to the minors moment.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. That's a great question. I feel like I definitely should have like an answer that I don't know. Honestly, it was just like everything. It just goes back to like little stuff, like dealing with handling with players. Obviously, all our players are great to work with, and they're so great anytime we need them to do something. But I don't know. I think it just goes back to the little things, just like even like setting up radio gear before a game. Like, I guess I could go into this a little bit. So like setting up like all those cords like that have to go in the back. I know like now I know where they go, but like I remember my first couple games, like I'd go up and like set, because I would set everything up at the home game. So I like would kind of go set everything up, and then like stuff that I didn't know where it went, I would just kind of like leave on the table, like just kind of sitting there and like kind of wait for Eric to like walk up and just be like, oh yeah, I gotta like run down. Like, you just mind just like plugging that one back in there a second, like, and then it like kind of went on. Then finally one day he's like, do you even know like where that one's supposed to go in? And I'm like, no, like not really. So he gave me a lot of crap for that, but it was just a ton of little things like that. No crazy stories, I guess, at least that I could tell on here. But yeah, just going back, it's all the little things.
All I remember is track pants at the bar. That's all. Oh,
that's a good one.
Yeah. So I got a text from Eric. I think you guys were here for like a rare overnight.
We were there a Friday, Sunday or something. I think it was
something like that. And Eric's like, what are you doing tonight? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, come to Raoul's, which is a bar that he really enjoys around here in Glens Falls, right by the arena. So I said, okay. I come in, and I see Cam wearing a t-shirt and track pants. The team issued track pants.
Oh yeah, we had just gotten off the bus. It was what do they call that? Where you get in, you just throw the bag in the hotel room, and then you bounce out.
Yeah.
What do they call that? I don't know. They bring it up all the time.
A bag chucker or something like that.
Yeah, bag chucker.
Bag chucker.
So I checked and I didn't even think anything of it. I was just like, oh, we're just going to have like dinner and whatnot. And next thing you know, it became like this whole thing. Like,
yeah, I think
he's making up a song about me wearing track pants, and like it was. Yeah.
Cam, appreciate you stopping by here on Coastin, man. Really looking forward to seeing you again once we get started in October. Best of luck to you. Enjoy office work again. I know it's probably something that you probably never dreamt of, saying, oh, I can't wait to get back in the office and work again. But now you're back and you're happy. There's a smile on your face. The hair looks good, and can't wait to see you in October, man.
Yeah, feels good to be back. Thanks for having me on, fellas. I feel like we could chat all day, but we'll keep in touch throughout the summer and look forward to seeing you guys.
Well, it's been another episode of Coastin presented by FloHockey TV. For David Fine, I'm Evan Pivnick. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next week.